So I finished one. It was something I wanted to read around a year ago, but I heard of the remake, so here we are. I'm always confusing this title with Moon, which is supposedly kind of on the more fucked up side. I read some of the OG one while going through this one just to see if I'm missing something, and overall it's kinda the same. Sometimes the fan TL does a better job, other times this one flows better. The worst aspect is whoever handled the choices, because there's times where the answer's like, yeah, I guess, to some theoretical question, and then the new one's like, it's like, what the fuck is that? You choose that thinking it's like, oh, maybe he's giving some more thought into it, but the convo just talked about like, oh, yeah, he'd do it. It's like, what the they just put yes, this is bullshit. There's also this quiz near the beginning where it was pretty comical in the OG, but they pretty much just removed half of the humor in it. Basically, the quiz is just doing synonyms, but the OG also had like giving you an example sentence with a blank, and the shit was pretty funny overall. The new one just removed that part and it got pretty bland, and it also gets on your nerves because you have to do this every time you make a new run, and it's like 10 questions. Sure, it doesn't take much, it's like 1 minute, but it just annoyed me. I only went through 2 routes in the OG, I see no difference in terms of plot, so nothing was really taken out and nothing was added, when it really should have been, but I'll get to that later. Some of the backgrounds are more barren since they just removed all the Moon characters that are used as cameos. I didn't go into it, I'm just assuming either they don't have the rights or rather just remove the association from that title anyway. The 18s were rather poor in the OG, but honestly the routes themselves are poor in their own right anyway. So some background knowledge is that this is some kind of like OG type of shit. I think this has made a second go on writing after Moon, but apparently he worked on this like Chaos Queen thing, but that I'd never heard of. Anyways, don't get your hopes up because it's kinda bad. It felt like something a bunch of friends made when hanging out in the bar. The best way to illustrate it is that it feels like all these important scenes were storyboarded, but never came back to add the filler in between to make it all work well. So the end product is that the routes themselves are like an hour each, and not only are they like an hour or two, a good chunk of it is the same in every route due to the main aspects being about the main character. I was told to leave Akane for last, and I can see what they're going for, but on the other hand, I can also tell you just like, hey, just go for a common route outside of like Akane's choices, do that route, and then just leave, and it works just as well. Which is weird because the cover image is Nagamori, and I'll go through them spoilers. It's really weird that the routes are so rushed considering the common route has so much going for it. You can already tell what makes this title great in here. Kohei is the main character, and just like Maeda's classics, he's pretty much an asshole. And it works, generally it's a fun time because of it. Sure, there's not much going for him, but he's still not vanilla. Some prefer the faceless avatar that you control, but it's just not for me. I guess another thing I should note is that he only did half of it and Hasaya did the other half. I can't guarantee it, but almost anything you liked about Kanon also came from this guy. Maeda only started blazing once it was air. Anyways, the characters are handled by Hasaya, and the ones handled by Maeda don't really interact with each other outside of a few lines like introducing them to Nagamori. There's also this option that puts a small image of what choice affects which character. Some of them are flags, some of them are just points for some scenes, but it feels like you can miss around like 20% and still get your route. I'm not sure how it was on Steam, but it was just on by default on Jest, and I'd say just turn it off for your first run. It kind of messes up with the magic. Like, I went all over the place in my run where I was just relentlessly bullying the Soon character, and out of nowhere, I'm taking care of this child who's apparently only like 2 years younger than you. Then out of nowhere, she's just not brought up again. It's like, where the fuck did you go? And I'm in a route with like a mute girl. It's like, okay, yeah, fine. Rating this one is kind of weird because I feel like I either misunderstood it or I don't see the point of it. What is one? Is it just about the singular bond that it craves for? Which I think is probably what it is because the hidden route is also about that. Is it like the unifying of both places? Is it just learning to enjoy one's time he gets to experience with his friends? I don't know. It's like, I don't think it'll affect my score all that much, but it becomes a little more empty to me than what I feel like they were going for. Ken and Clannad technically does this too, but it's more apparent with what they're going for. And it's like, alright, it's fine. And I know people that aren't fan of Clannad and they consider most of the routes are like, oh yeah, just hanging out with this girl or whatever. And it's like, no, there's a lot more going on. It's not very apparent, it's there. So I'm wondering if I'm also in that group, but for this title. And it's like, what if there's a lot of shit going on in it? You know, a lot of things you can appreciate and I just don't notice it. Overall, if you read the OG, then I don't see the reason to read this one. Otherwise, go with this one. The art is great, you understand when the 18s were going to happen, the mute girl actually gets some sounds this time around, the other characters sound like what they're going for, maybe the largest difference is Nagamori, where it feels more like a mom than just like a caring airhead, but both work in different ways. The routes themselves are kinda crap, and sometimes I'd even give them like a 4 overall, because a good chunk of them is just the same shit again, and everything gets resolved the same too. It's like, holy crap, this is boring. There's one of those things where it feels like it wasn't intended to fully complete it and just go for like a run or two. It's like, yeah, you had fun, that's great. The common route itself is like a 7, and that's great considering it's like 80% of the whole damn VN. So most of the spoilers is basically around Nagamori, but before that, the child I was talking about before was Mayu. Supposedly she graduates that year, and I think Gohei was like in the second year, so either like 2 year difference. With her mannerisms, I thought she was a lot younger than the OG route is kind of fucked up because of it. But I think that was also during the time where lolis were like pretty popular for some reason. Anyways, after that, honestly, it's like, oh, actually she's around the same age, and it's like, oh, she's like severely autistic, and apparently not. So I don't know why she was like that. Then there's these monologues happening at intervals throughout the plot where it's the different Gohei talking about like the other world and how he wants to leave it, but he knows he'll eventually be there once again. I think he's supposed to be younger in these, and there's like a younger Nagamori talking with him as well. Part of me thought maybe these were like conversations when they were kids, but some of them are just like too weird for that to be the case. Anyways, it makes it look like Nagamori is essential to the plot. She's the cover, she's in the logo, she's the main focus in the OP. Technically, you can say that because she's always around Koei, part of her world is disintegrating once he eventually disappears, and you can see it like, oh, she's like the anchor and she's the one that's tethered him to this world, but the plot always has her forgetting him anyway, unless it's her route. So you can say that he's been tethered down a lot longer than he was expecting to her, but it's finally running out. None of this happens. I don't understand why she's integral. She's there. It's like, okay, I like her a lot. I just don't know why she's so important. Also, there's this whole thing with his dying to eventually dead sister. I assume she has cancer. I feel like maybe that was the trigger point. That's how he first got into contact with the other world. But I think that was also around the same time he met Nagamori. So like, what the fuck is this too? And I just don't understand. So this one's done. The next one is going to take a while because it's like Notomi again, and it's not going to be the Notomi you're going to see next month. That's a different one, but it's also the one I always wanted to read, and I was just busy with other things, and I'm also doing this stupid randomizer with Ocarina of Time. None of this is going to be on YouTube, but it's just like something I have fun with, and I'm getting really angry because I'm not getting any success with it right now. But overall, it's like, yeah, next one, probably Notomi or Kira Kira.